Americans for Fair Taxation presents the weekly Chairman's Report, written by Steve Hayes, president of Americans for Fair Taxation, and recorded by Bob Paxton, a volunteer with the Florida FAIRtax Educational Association. And now, this week's Chairman's Report.
Hello, I'm Bob Paxton with the AFFT Chairman's Report for Friday, September 15th, 2023. Unless the Supreme Court stops them, Congress will pick our pockets even more. All of us who have owned a home understand that the property tax we pay is based on the appraised value of the home. We can live in a home for 20 years and be taxed more each year based on the increase in value of the home. However, this is not the case with the income tax. Until now, an individual's income is only taxed when it's received. If a person owns stock that appreciates, the gain in value exists only on paper until the stock is sold and the gain is actually realized. Consequently, under current law, such capital gains are not taxed until the asset is sold and the seller has the money in his pocket. Now, if you have an annual salary of $60,000 and are paid in 12 monthly installments of $5,000, you don't pay tax on the entire $60,000 at once. Taxes are withheld each month as you receive your money. Now, all of us have heard calls for a wealth tax that would not tax income, but simply the wealth of an individual once a year. Under such a wealth tax, if someone owned stock that had appreciated in value over the year, that gain in value would be taxed even though the person still owns the stock and has not yet realized the gain. Now, of course, Congress has wide authority to tax corporations, and they're not protected from being taxed on unrealized income. An example is the corporate minimum tax, which corporations pay even if no regular corporate income tax is due. Now, Congress's ability to tax unrealized gains through either a wealth tax, the alternative minimum tax, or some other type of tax may be determined by Moore versus United States. That's a case coming before the Supreme Court this fall. An article published by Forbes magazine made these points. One of the provisions of the 2017 Tax Cuts and Jobs Act was to assess an income tax on some foreign earnings even if they were not realized by U.S. taxpayers. The Moores are U.S. citizens who own 11% of a farm tool business in India that sells small tools to farmers. Now, they never received a dividend or distributions, they never sold their stock, and they wake up one morning in 2018 and find that they owe a tax. Now, they assert that this tax is unconstitutional and not supported by court cases requiring that income actually be realized before it is taxed. The Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals rejected their arguments, but the Supreme Court has agreed to hear the case. In conclusion, yes, the Moore case is very important. If the Supreme Court rules that individuals can be taxed on money they haven't yet received, the income payroll tax system will become even more aberrant. Our personal budgeting and planning is based on our after-tax income, and many of us have put money aside in IRAs, 401ks, and other retirement vehicles that promise we will pay no federal income tax until we start to withdraw the money. Now, if the Supreme Court rules in favor of the D.C. power grab, we could soon find ourselves paying taxes on the increase in value of our retirement accounts, even if it hasn't been paid to us yet, the increase in value of our homes or other investment real estate, and the increase in value of our other investments or property we own. Now, this will be a bureaucrat's dream. Think of all the new D.C. bureaucrats that will have to be hired in order to enforce these new tax calculations and determine if we value our increases properly. Well, what happens if the value of an asset goes down? Do we get a refund? Are they going to accept our local property assessor's valuation on our homes, or will we be required to pay for an additional appraisal? Will they require you to get appraisals on the value of your other investments that have no public market, things like your coin collection or ownership in a small business? What about the value of a farm that may increase every year? Now, if these new taxes on unrealized income become a reality, you'll have only 3 ways to pay them. You can pay them out of your pocket and reduce your disposable income. You can pay them out of your savings, or you can sell some assets that you would prefer to hold on to. We must always remember that bureaucrats are always seeking to expand their numbers and their power. In many cases, They realize that the demand for the job they do has been artificially created and that we can get along just fine without them. With the income payroll tax system, this is glaringly true. The income payroll tax system is complex, unfair, and discriminates against most Americans. It interferes with every aspect of our lives, and it's totally unnecessary. There's a much better, fairer, and more efficient way to fund the government, the FAIRtax. Now think of why D.C. bureaucrats hate the FAIRtax. It'll put most of them out of work, as the FAIRtax will be collected by the states. Now there will still be some people in D.C. who will be needed to monitor the FAIRtax collections from the states. However, the IRS, 260 million tax returns, and countless wasted American taxpayer hours spent trying to comply with the tax code will all be gone. Now, the only reason to have the complex income payroll tax system is to give jobs to bureaucrats, give D.C. control over how much of our incomes we get to keep, and to provide politicians with an ATM machine to finance their campaigns. So why would D.C. pass the FAIRtax and give up this almost unlimited source of donations? Well, they won't, at least not voluntarily. The only way they'll do it is if the rest of us demand it. Now, Congress and D.C. know that there's a better alternative to the present system, the FAIRtax. Instead of spending time and money doing endless hours of paperwork that don't create anything of value for yourself, your family, or the nation, why not just eliminate the unnecessary waste? The FAIRtax transfers power from the government and bureaucrats to the people. We, not the bureaucrats in D.C., will decide how much tax we pay. Now, isn't it time to end this ludicrous tax collection system and the IRS along with it? When the FAIRtax is enacted, there will be no need to fear being audited by the IRS or raided by armed IRS agents, because there will be no more IRS. Now, there's going to be a vote on the FAIRtax in the House of Representatives. Speaker McCarthy and the other elites didn't want it, but it was forced on them. Now, we have the opportunity to force all members of the House to show where they stand. They can vote for the present income payroll tax system, or they can vote for the FAIRtax. They can support the corrupt income tax in the IRS, or they can vote to eliminate it. It can't be any simpler than that. They can hide the true cost of their government, or they can pass the FAIRtax and show everyone the true cost of government on every retail receipt. And finally, they can support the largest transfer of power from the government to the people, the FAIRtax, or they can vote against it. Now, if members think the FAIRtax needs to be changed, then they can propose that change. Don't let them get away with rejecting the entire bill because it has a flaw in it that can be easily addressed. Please stand with us and demand that your representatives support a much fairer, much simpler, and much more efficient way to fund the government, the FAIRtax. The FAIRtax doesn't pick winners and losers. Because it taxes spending, not earnings, the FAIRtax lets everyone save for their retirement tax-free. The FAIRtax will allow us to take back control. The income payroll tax system is broken. It's no longer working. We can't repair it, but we can replace it with the FAIRtax. Join us and take back control of our country and our lives, not with bullets, but with the elimination of one of the biggest threats to our liberty and economic prosperity, the income payroll tax. We should all remember Edmund Burke's warning that applies to our efforts to take back control. Nobody made a greater mistake than he who did nothing, because he could only do a little. We should also remember this quote from George Orwell's 1984, which, if we do nothing, may foretell your and your children's future. If you want to picture the future, imagine a boot stamping on a human face forever. So what can each of us do? We can write letters and make calls to our elected representatives and attend Zoom town hall meetings demanding that if they really want to allow Americans to take back control, the first step is to eliminate the income payroll tax system and enact the FAIRtax. Take back control. Help us pass the FAIRtax. Help us bring about real tax reform and stop future IRS abuses. By contributing or investing $10.40 a month, you help provide a financial base to Americans for fair taxation. Now, if you can make larger contributions/investments, these will be used not for salaries, as we're all volunteers, but for the needed updates to our economic studies, which will be vital for all future years. Please go to FAIRtax.org now and invest in AFFT. It's an investment in your and your family's future.
This has been the Weekly Chairman's Report, written by Steve Hayes, President of Americans for Fair Taxation. Check back every week for news and information about the fair tax, and learn why the fair tax should replace our antiquated federal income tax system. If you'd like to receive a copy of the Chairman's Report in your inbox every week, sign up at FAIRtax.org.